Yep. Go ahead, Charlie. Yep, you're like.
Hello, thank you for coming tonight. And those of you online, thank you for watching. This is the public information meeting for the Washington County Shared Ride Taxi.
And we're gonna share the screen.
Looks like it's already shared. I think. There we go. Okay.
Okay. Well, you know, the recording's working. The chair.
Are there two open?
All right, we're gonna try this again. Go ahead, Charlie.
Alrighty. Hello, thank you for all coming tonight. Those of you online, thank you for watching. This is the public information meeting for the Washington County Shared Ride Taxi. Over here, we have the Chief Public Works Officer, Scott Schmidt.
Closer.
And my name is Charles Kofta. I'm the Transit Manager. We have a short presentation tonight, followed by an open Q&A session. All right, so on this slide, we have a brief history of the Shared Ride Taxi, or SRT. It's a door-to-door shared ride taxi service. Door-to-door means at the time of your pickup, you can be escorted from the pickup location's door to the taxi, or you'll be secured by the driver if necessary. Once you're at your destination, the driver can escort you out of the vehicle and to your destination's door. Shared ride means that other riders may be picked up and are dropped off during your ride. Shared ride taxi started in 1998 with 22,000 rides. Our current contracted service provider is SDS, and there's a request for proposal done every 5 years. Washington County purchases the vehicles and supplies the fuel. This fare proposal is for Washington County Shared Ride Taxi only. This does not impact the cities of Hartford and West Bend. So as you can see, the last fare increase was in 2012. Since 2012, costs have increased. As you can see in the table below, costs have remained relatively stable. Costs lowered in 20 to 2021 due to the pandemic, but then onwards, inflation takes its effect on costs. For example, a minivan in 2020 cost roughly $40,000. While in 2024, that same minivan nearly doubles in price. In 2020, a minibus is $55,000. That same minibus in 2024 is $115,000. Again, almost doubling in price.
Thank you, Charlie. The slide that you see up on the screen right now kind of goes through our costs for the past 12 years. You'll see that the costs remain relatively flat from 2012 to 2020 when the pandemic hit. Costs went down in 2020 when the pandemic hit because we weren't providing as many rides during that time period. Also, we received federal funding during that period, additional federal funding upon what we normally receive to help with costs going forward. But then you'll see in 2021 and 22, 23, and anticipated in 24, that cost greatly increasing. Everyone's aware of inflation and what it's doing. This just shows that even though before this maybe we had 2 or 3% inflation for years, it didn't have that great of an impact on the shared ride taxi service. But in the last 4 years, 3 to 4 years, it certainly has. Down below on that same spreadsheet, you'll see the vehicle costs. You'll see in 2012, a minivan, again, ADA compliant minivan, was 34,000 in 2012, and that jumped up to 39,000 in 2020. You can see just briefly from 2020 to 2024, the cost nearly doubled for just one minivan. You look at a minibus cost in 2012 was 41,000, 2020 was 55,000, significant increase, no doubt. But again, a near double increase from 2020 to 2024. Not only that, but it's a challenge getting them. We ordered our last 2 minibuses in 2021 and still don't have them yet. The 415,000 is their best estimate, and it could be even higher than that. So it's just amazing how much the cost of stuff has increased since 2020. You also look at everything that we do is related to this consumer price index. And if you look from 2012 to 2023, it went up about 30% from 229 to 305 points. In the same time period, you look at our ridership, again, averaging pretty much around 93,000, 90,000 between 2012 all the way up to 2019. And of course, then that wonderful pandemic hit, dropped our ridership. We did stay open during the pandemic and did receive additional federal funding on top of that to stay open because our fares dramatically decreased during that time period. Slowly, as you see, the ridership has increased up to, we're anticipating about 76,000 rides this month. And again, it's rides. So that's 76,000 rides. So most people take a ride to work, to a location, to church, and then a ride back. So I just want to point that out, that sometimes people think we have serviced 75 or 76,000 people. That's not the case. It's basically 76,000 rides that we provided to the public in Washington County in 2023 is our estimate as we kind of project going forward. So as you can see that obviously if we're down 20,000 rides, that impacts the amount of fare revenue that we receive. The bottom left-hand corner of that same slide shows just how much federal funding we received. $6 million in federal funding to help keep the shared ride taxi and the commuter express open. It's often asked, where'd that commuter express money go? That commuter express money we did not actually budget the commuter express in our last budget cycle for 22 and 23. We used our federal funding to actually service the commuter express those 2 years. We also used some of that COVID fund to help keep the shared ride taxi costs down the last several years. So you saw the increase that we had for inflation versus the cost that we actually passed on to the people that are using the service. And we utilized those funds to a fullest extent. It's unfortunate that we did have to terminate the commuter express, but what that does is allows us to use that $300,000 in tax levy for our shared ride taxi service and don't have to fight between the two and even have more drastic problems going on with reducing hours or reducing service or increasing the fares even more dramatically and not have to fight between the two services and devote all of our transit funding to this one service. We also have a trust fund that was in transit and we use that mostly for our vehicles. And with the vehicle costs going up and the state wanting us to, that trust fund will be gone in a few years. And so we're going to show you a little bit later on. It's not only talking about this year, but I think we'll be back in the next couple of years to discuss potential other changes coming forward. Next slide, please. So what have our costs been since 2012 and what are those costs? First and foremost, we have operating costs. And what those are roughly split. We were splitting those between the commuter express and shared ride taxi. That's stuff like my time that I spent on it, or Charlie's time spent on operating expenses going forward. So now all those costs, marketing, stuff like that, are all going to be absorbed by the shared ride taxi service. You can see that just about doubled from 23 to 24. Our contracted service with STS, that's our provider. You can see from 2012 went up to 2019, went up 100,000, 2023. Now we're up roughly 500,000 from 2012. And now again in 2024, you can see a great increase since 2012. Fuel, remarkably, about the same, believe it or not. that back in 2012, we had some higher fuel prices. You can see in 2019, we we're a little more fortunate with lower fuel prices. But you'll see that from 2012 to 2024, that the fuel prices, and again, within a couple $1,000s, about being relatively flat. And obviously with a shared ride taxi system, fuel is a big driver. And if all of a sudden in the next 2 years, it goes up to $4 a gallon or higher, that could be a problem for our shared ride taxi. Vehicles we discussed earlier, capital and vehicles, you can see in 2012, we had $373,000 in vehicles that we obtained. In 2024. It's about 700,000. So again, just about doubled. Then you look when you grand total it all up, back in 2012, about 2.5 million, and now we're about 3.4 million in expenses. And somehow we got to cover those costs. So now that you know kind of the why we're here tonight, what are we going to do about it? So we looked at several different options and obviously proposed several of these to our Public Works Committee. And thankfully, the chair is here tonight to help listen to your concerns, and hopefully people are online watching this as well. One thing we could do is increase fares, which we'll talk about that in a little more detail. But number two is we hear that the community likes the service, needs the service. We actually have an elderly population that's growing in Washington County. And so we're really hesitant to lower our amount of service hours. That's the amount of hours we allot to STS to actually run the service. 58,000 hours they're contracted for every year. And what that does is allow them during the week and weekends to disperse their buses and minibuses and vans out there to actually help pick up people. And our buses are more scheduled during the heavier periods of time to have more service hours. At any given time, we might have 19 buses on the road, all the way down to 2 buses, like late on a Sunday or stuff. So we kind of do that, but that's how you do the contracted service hours. We could decrease those. That means we just have less buses on the road at any given time. Another way to save money is we could deduct the time that we're actually open. That helps with the service hours. We could eliminate Sunday operations. We could eliminate weekends altogether. We could reduce our weekday hours or even our weekend hours, just tighten those timeframes up and not replace them into the week. Again, we already talked about the termination of the WCCE. Again, that was COVID funded for the last 2 years. The last option, of course, is increased taxes, which isn't very popular in this county. You can imagine increasing them 50,000, 100,000 or more just to keep the same service and the same prices they are right now. And of course, we could do a combination of all those things as well. We could raise fares a little bit and reduce our hours of service and reduce our service hours as well. But again, we hear the community and they're looking at raising the fares as probably the best option. And what we're doing is trying to limit the impact, and why we chose the lesser impact on elderly disabled and then maintaining the same level of service. I know this is hard. This webinar, this PowerPoint presentation will be posted on our website tomorrow, hopefully. And you can look at all this information in much closer scrutiny. But you see a graph there representing just how many adults we have in the service that report as adults, those that report as agency fares, disabled, elderly, students, and who use the hospital rate. So you kind of get a percentage total of all the rides that are out there. I'll go to the next slide, please, Charlie. This next slide is a busy slide. And this is one you're going to have to probably take a little while to digest. And there is just a whole lot of numbers on here. And basically, these are the same numbers that were used for the graph that you saw previously. What I really want to point out to you is the top is the adults. And we've got lots of data. We're very appreciative to our service provider to be able to have all this data right at our fingertips and have virtually live data available to us. And when you look at the adults, again, you have the percentage of all riders. So the second column has the percent of all riders. So you can see that our adults are about 25% of our ridership. And the first column is, well, how many rides do they take? And this, again, the first half of the year in 2023. So again, a half a year of data. You'll see that of the adults, of the 25% adults, 10% of those, they only take 10% of the 25, excuse me, they only take 1 or 2 rides. You got another 10% that takes between 3 and 24 rides. And again, 3% and 2%. And again, those 9,900 rides, those two categories, the ones that are taking it Not quite every day, but nearly every day service. So you'll see that's about 85 people in those last two categories. That would be probably the most greatly impacted by this fare increase. Again, the 49 plus the 36. And when you slide down a little bit further, you want to say, well, how bad is that impact? Are these all going to take $30 rides at the 20+ mile rate? And you slide down to the 0 to 5 miles, you can see that 28% of them rate under the word disabled, or 1,643 of the rides, again, is in the 0 to 5 miles for those people that are 100+ rides. And then 37% are in the 5 to 10 miles. So again, the first two categories take up about 65% of those adults that would be greatly impacted. Again, on the lower fare, if you slide all the way to the right of the 100+ rides and 4%, then we're talking about 257 rides that provide. So again, that higher expense of the going from $9 up to $30 is minimal impact as far as how many people they are. No doubt it's real live people. I'm not kidding on that, but again, we're trying to minimize the impact out there, generally speaking, out there. So the column down below is the same thing with the elderly, disabled, students, agencies, and hospitals all put together down there. And again, the 100+ riders have taken 100+ rides. Again, it's 97 individual riders. And you can see about 58% of them are also in that 0 to 5 or 5 to 10 mile bracket. So again, about 60%. So again, trying to look at all the data together going, okay, how can we increase fares, try not to impact the elderly disabled as much because there are more of those around a fixed income, and put it onto the adult riders. And even those adult riders, how do we look at that and saying, okay, these are the ones that are really impacted, greatly impacted, versus the ones that just may take, 1 or 2 rides. So that was kind of the logic behind it. Next slide. Thank you. Again, another busy slide. And again, take a look at it tomorrow or the next day at your leisure. Again, I'm a lifelong resident of Washington County, except for a couple of years in college. So I don't get out of the county much anymore as outside, and certainly don't take shared ride taxis outside of the county. So I thought it was very important to look and see, what does everybody else do? What service do they provide in their counties, and what are they charging? And so you'll see the first column is our kind of 9, I'll call them near neighbors, and counties that are similar in size: Sheboygan, Waukesha, Fond du Lac, Jefferson, Manitowoc, Calumet, Racine, Dodge, Ozaukee, those that have those services. And you can see the second column there is what is their fare for the elderly disabled. Again, ranges from $3, $4.75, $2.50, $3, $15 for Calumet, $5 for Racine, $5 for Dodge. And then the next column is, well, who do they service? And you look at the first 7, they only service the elderly and disabled. And why is that? And how can they do that? It's part of their funding mechanisms that they do that. And Washington County certainly could go to that system as well. So I know we're increasing the adults' fares. It's not a necessary thing that we do, that we provide the service to the adults. So that's something that is above and beyond that we do, as you can see, to compare to 7 of our neighbors don't provide the service to adults. But we do in Washington County. And I think that's important that we keep doing that. That's why we're not looking at restricting adults from that project. We also hear that we're turning away rides, and we're probably turning away rides from elderly and disabled people, and they're probably not real happy about that. But we're looking at also then, well, do you just take the adults off the rides and make more ridership available for elderly disabled and not have any service for them at all? And we didn't think that was really fair either. So there's a lot of decision points going into this, and sometimes priorities and decisions are hard in life and not looked at lightly. And we did look at this for quite some time. And you'll see that notes on the fares, some are mileage based as well. We look at weekends and our weekend hours that we do provide in Washington County. A healthy amount of hours, Saturday from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., Sunday 8 to 4. A lot of the other counties don't provide the weekend service except for our neighbor to the east, Ozaukee County. The total hours a week, I was shocked by this. A lot of them, again, during the week, weekdays, 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week. You get down to our Fond du Lac, Ozaukee and Washington County, we're open 110 hours. There's 168 hours in a week, and we're open 110 of them. I think that's pretty darn impressive, and provide that service not only in the early morning, but late at the evening too for the traveling public. Then we have obviously the hours at the beginning and hours at the end. And I can't stress enough that last column, I think is telling as well. Sheboygan County is a pretty big county. Waukesha County, now they have some private, some public agencies that provide different services because they have some more communities. But when you look at Fond du Lac and Manitowoc and Jefferson and Calumet, Dodge, they have cities and their footprints roughly the same size of ours, if not larger. And you go to Sheboygan going, yeah, they got 5 city buses, and their rural areas, they have volunteer drivers. And then you go to Waukesha County, they have 1 paratransit, and they rely everything else is private providers. And then you go down to Fond du Lac, 1 van for the rural, 1 handy van in the city, and 1 county person takes their personal vehicle for medical appointments. It's not ADA compliant. All right. You go to Jefferson County, a little better. They have 8 vehicles and 1 designated just for veterans. You go to Manitowoc, they have 4 vehicles. 3 of them have wheelchairs and 1's a sedan. Again, Calumet, 5 wheelchairs. Again, volunteer drivers of personal vehicles on top of that. Racine contracts with a private vendor. They do about 18,000 rides a year. Now, Racine is pretty populous on the east side of Racine. Note about it, they have city buses. So again, not a apples to apples comparison to what we have, but they definitely have a rural area in the western side of Racine County. Dodge County has 1 bus, 7 minivans, and they are all wheelchair accessible. But again, not open on weekends and only open 40 hours a week. You go to Ozaukee County, very similar to ours. Remember, we were looking at merging with Ozaukee County. They have 27 vehicles. I believe a good short portion of them are ADA compliant as well, but I know they even have some Priuses available as well. Then you look at Washington County, 29 vehicles. Now, again, any given time, anywhere from 2 to 19 are on the road. Unfortunately, we do hit deer. We get in accidents because we're out there a lot. The vehicles need to have oil changes, tire rotations, and stuff like that too. And we only have the 58,000 hours to spend out there as well. So we can't have all 29 on the road at any given time, but we do have 29 vehicles available to us that when we do have issues with some of the vehicles, and we do have issues with some of our vehicles, especially when we can't get minibuses that we wanted 3 years ago, it's great to have those extra vehicles. And in the bottom right-hand corner shows you what that vehicle breakdown is. When you put a minivan in there, it's not your normal minivan. It is an ADA compliant minivan with a wheelchair lift. We have 11 of those, 12 minibuses, 4 bariatric. We got into that several years ago because our wheelchairs kept getting larger and larger on us. We wanted to make sure we were able to accommodate the people that are in that situation. So we actually went out and got bariatric vans for that service. And then the last one we got actually, because we couldn't get any other vehicles, we went down to Indiana and bought 2 little Transit Connect vehicles. Because we looked at that, we do have some ambulatory people that we can take. They're a little bit easier on the fuel. So it's like, hey, we worked with STS and said, hey, will this work for you? And they said, yeah, let's give it a try. And haven't heard too many negative comments about that. And we appreciate that. And so again, you see those Ozaukee County, Washington County service hours on your far right-hand side. You can see that how that compares. Then we wanted to see how do we compare with the private sector. And so Charlie did a fantastic job and looked at Uber rides here in Washington County and said, all right, our current fares are for adults are $4.25 up to $9. If you ran a couple of different case scenarios, and we got the spreadsheets if you want to see them, and the average Uber fares were from 10 to 44. And we're looking at that going, okay, if we go to 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, we're under the Uber rates. So that's great. But also, if you're not familiar with Washington County, we don't have a lot of private taxi service providers in Washington County. Again, the city of Hartford has it, West Bend has it, but they're not out there. And we'd be looking at it over the course of the next couple of years, see if we can get some of those in here and bring in competition. And maybe the Uber rates fall down, and maybe the private sector comes in here and provides those rides to the adults, and they go on that service versus taking ours and leaving our service open for the elderly disabled that need a ADA compliant vehicle for their service. Next slide, please. So what if we do nothing? Let's not change a thing. Let's keep it the same. Don't adjust fares. Let's keep our hours of operation the same. And what does that look like? This next slide shows what that looks like. Again, our target levy was 300,000. We don't do anything, then we'll be looking at a levy amount for 24 and 25 around $450,000. So extra $150,000 a year we would need for that service. In 26 and 27, again, jumps up to 522 and 525. So call it 525,000 a year. Again, we're using up that CARES, CARISA, and ARPA funds. We're using up our trust fund. It gets more bleak in 28 and 29 as those funds are gone. And that's when I think that either in 2 years or 4 years, we'll be back here again talking about rate increases or hours of operation or service hours. If we don't start getting some public sectors in here to take some of this load off. Even if we do, I think we might have to have that conversation. I'm just preparing you now saying, I don't want to hear 2 years from now, hey, you said this be fine for 4 years or 6 years or whatever. No, this is a big problem. If our economy doesn't change and those lines keep going up really steep, you got to remember STS pays their drivers, and their drivers are going to want COLA increases and merit increases. Our insurance costs keep going up. I'm sure their insurance costs going up, and everything else that just keeps going up with inflation. And if that doesn't come under control, I know we're going to be back here. And I know it's not a great situation. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to prepare you for the future. That I don't want to hear come back saying, "Oh, Scott, you said we'd be fine for the next 4 years," and that just may not be the case. And so we're very fortunate to have the ARPA funds left, and by making that decision to end the Commuter Express on September, saying, why did you end in September, not going to end the year? That would have been that much more ARPA funds that would have went to the Commuter Express that we wouldn't have to help keep the shared ride taxi service as low as we possibly can right now. So it's all interrelated when we look at fares and services. The other option, I just want to point at the bottom of that page, is that if we didn't do fare increases at all and just want to look at our service hours, we'd have to reduce our service hours from 58,000 hours that we provide to STS down to 35 or 40% reduction. That'd be like 40% less buses on the road at any given time. So I say 19 buses, now we'd be down to 8 maybe. When I talk about 2 buses on a Sunday night, we're down to 1. And then that's part of the challenge, is that we know it's hard out there, that when the pandemic was going on and just after that, it was fairly easy to get rides because we didn't have the ridership. And now ridership's coming back up, and now it might take 2 days, 4 days notice. And we unfortunately are turning away rides. It's the cold, hard reality of it. And to then increase the service hours to 58 or 60 or 65 just becomes cost prohibitive. And so that brings us to the reason that we're here tonight, is what are those fare increases going to be? And again, what we're proposing here at the Highway Department to the Public Works Committee is to keep that contracted service hours right at the 58,000. So not changing that. Again, we anticipate about a 25% loss in adult ridership with the fare increase. We're hoping that they can contact their co-workers and see about setting up ride shares and ride pools and stuff like that. Again, we'd look at that. What we're looking at doing is most of the elderly, disabled, hospital and student and agency fares going up roughly $1, different by categories. Again, the ones on the lower end went up about 50 cents. The ones on the upper end went up about $1.25, excuse me. Again, basically getting to the nearest dollar. So rounding it up to nearest dollar. And if the category of elderly at the 15 to 20 miles got to 6. So that's why the 20 plus went to 7. So looking at doing that, and the next slide, I believe, has the older rates on it. Right, Charlie? Or the previous slide, excuse me, has those rates on that we can certainly take back and look at. What that gets us to is a levy amount in 24 and 25 to meet our levy target, the tax levy, tax dollars here in Washington County at 300,000. And then again, because that trust fund starts running out and the CARES and CRISA, so we're looking at 26 and 27, that being already jumped up to 372 and 374 for the next budget cycle with the increased fares. And that's why if my levy stays the same in 26 and 24, we have to find $72,000 somewhere, either by reducing hours, reducing the service hours, or increasing fares again. And so that's the kind of the whole hard reality that we're looking at, is that real hard numbers out here. And, you know, we have to keep buying vehicles, and we have to keep paying our drivers, and we have to keep paying our insurance and our light bills and everything else. And unfortunately, those things are rising up substantially. And realistically, yes, could we have raised fares the last several years? But by the graphs, we didn't need to. And so, but now we actually need to. And so that's where it's coming from, is trying to limit the impact on the elderly, disabled. And there's no doubt the adults, they're going to get hard on this. We're not here sugarcoating. We're not hiding this in the corner somewhere. We're coming out here tonight to do a public information meeting. We had brochures on the bus for this information meeting, and hopefully there's people at home that are able to watch this to see what we're doing. And next slide, please. And so what's the next steps? going forward. So we do have a public hearing. So tonight's about us getting you some information and you certainly sharing your comments back with us today. And that provides you a nice give and take, a question and answer period. And we'll do our best to answer those and stay here. If you have certainly a succinct issue that's only to you, we certainly can address that after the meeting too. For the people at home might not be interested in your particular issue, but we can certainly address that. But the public hearing for this really is on October 19th at 6 p.m. In this same very room. And that's where you have the chance to talk to our Public Works Committee members and provide your public input to them. And they'll most likely vote on it in November after taking those comments into consideration. They'll be at that podium. The difference between that meeting and this meeting is that meeting is not interactive. It's not a back and forth. It's you providing comments and them listening and going forward. And that's why we thought that was very important here to have this meeting tonight. So we can have that conversation back and forth and discuss your concerns and more or less so you could hear what we're actually thinking about and why we're making this proposal. So we want to welcome you all back, and anybody that's watching at home or watches the recording, you're welcome back here again Thursday evening, October 29th at 6 p.m. In this room. We'll be having the public hearing most likely right at the beginning of the meeting. That the chairman's nodding, said yes, and doing that. Thursday's it. Oh, I'm sorry, 19th. It's on the board. So I'll probably still be here the 29th if you want to come and talk to me, but October 19th is the public hearing, and you'll get brochures for that on the shared ride taxi as well. So make sure the public is out there. They'll be on Facebook as well. So anyone who wants to share that, please do. We also will take public comments at the bottom of that slide you'll see, and on paperwork you'll see. We can also take those by email if you're unable to attend that night. You can email them to us. You can mail them to us if you'd like, if you have time. We'd be happy to put those in the packet so the Public Works Committee members actually can hear that right from you. They won't be read out loud, but they will be shared with the Public Works Committee inside their packet ahead of time. That's why we have a due date of a couple of days before that, so we have time to give it to them so they can read it before that meeting to look at that. With that, we would certainly welcome any comments, questions that we have. What we do have is we have a podium that's sitting right in front of me. We'll have the red light come on right now shortly. I want to hit that, the podium one. So the red light is on. That means people at home can now hear you. We would ask that when you go up to the microphone, you can see how close I am speaking into it. Speak into it well, please. And then people at home will be able to hear you as well. And you can move the microphone. It's flexible. So if you're taller or shorter, feel free to move it around. It's best to speak right into it. Thank you.
Yes, my voice generally carries anyway. Is there any chance of any of this going to a referendum? Increase?
No, we have a policy that if you look in our packets for our last two Public Works Committee meetings, the policy is any changes like this actually only has to go to the Public Works Committee. It doesn't even need to go to the county board. So it's actually only going to the Public Works Committee.
Does the county board then vote on that proposal?
No, only the Public Works Committee needs to vote on the fare increase.
Okay.
You said that you ordered 2 buses back in 21 that never arrived.
Mhm.
Furthermore, I've been noticing that there's a lot of buses, but there are very few riders. What I'm seeing is a poor management of funding being used for drivers, and the adults are being taken, not necessarily taken, but they're being charged more as a result of poor spending at this. And it's very ridiculous. For me, I work $17.50 an hour, $20.50 on the weekends. That would be $150 of my wages. That's almost 10 hours of my wages, not to mention. You're saying that inflation's going up. Well, no one's wages are going up very much. What it's doing is targeting this one. Not any of the other sections on there went up as much as the adults. And furthermore, I wanted to point out something that you said for the Uber thing. You said that it was going to be for average those around like the 10-mile area and under about $18. That is a lie. I did some research, and for me, personally, it will have been minimum $29. So I want to know where you're getting these facts at because this is ridiculous.
Sure, Charlie will be able to answer that. He's the one that did the
Oh, those were based off of actual trips in those categories. I ran them through just the Uber website, ran the trip, the start and the end, and then it gave the estimated fare for those trips. So
Well, it
based
must
on,
have been in previous years because this year things have gotten more and more expensive. What your service is doing is targeting the people that actually work, not necessarily the ones that don't work.
that Uber was collected, I believe back in July of this year. The Uber fares were calculated then.
I really do not believe that that it went up that much within the past few years. So, well, within the past 3 or so months. So I wish I could say I believe you, but what you're doing is complete and total robbery of the people that are actually working and saving up to actually have a living lifestyle.
There could be limitations such as time of day, the Uber fares being calculated.
Wish I could believe you.
That reminded me. Sorry.
That's all right.
What the young lady just said reminded me, I drive for the county taxi and one of my driver or riders goes to kidney dialysis 3 days a week, Hartford to Slinger. And it's a 7-mile ride roughly, and she called Uber herself. And a one-way trip was $32. So $64 for a round trip. She's gotten those numbers from an actual Uber source. So I don't know where you got your numbers from, and it's people I talk to that take Uber just say it's outrageously priced.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share the data that Charlie did. It's right here. So Charlie can actually share that with the people. You can have that over there. I think what that goes to show is that we're still a pretty good deal compared to Uber.
He's saying that Uber is actually higher than what we have.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
More expensive.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate the Washington County Transit System, and I think that it's a great program for vehicles to drive. I'm called an adult family home and I take care of people with disabilities in my home 24/7. So I could go in my car and drive them, but I feel that my job is to give people with disabilities independence and responsibility to hold on to their tickets. And get out in the community and even socialize in the taxi. That's my job, is to do this, but it's getting priced out of our abilities to do that. And the more that we drive and have, or I mean, the more that you pick up our people, disabled, elderly, anyone, it helps your program. If you price us out of the market, you're not going to have the ridership, which I suppose, like you're saying, the program will be done and null, but I would think that you want to encourage us and get more riders. And even if you have to do that 50 cents or something an hour, or, you know, or a ride, yes, but like I said, our guys don't get the raises like you would get a $20 an hour job. People with disabilities don't have that. And, like I said, I appreciate him been picking him up in the morning and he's just so happy to go on the taxi. But now sometimes he's driving almost 2 hours in the taxi, an hour and a half, hour, 40 minutes. And then he gets them to my program, who, when there's at the program, I have to pay that person. So I'm out of the budget for his program because I asked his case manager, I said, what am I going to do if she said, well, when he's got his money's gone, he can't go to the program anymore. Those things don't make sense. And I know it's not none of any of your business, but that's how it is with their money. You know, if you have, this goes up, then it takes that away from them. And like I said, I could drive him every day, but he loves it. He loves going on the taxi. He can keep track of his ticket, except you guys made the same colors as city taxi, so that doesn't help him with colors. But this is their independence, is to go on the taxi too.
Mhm.
the county taxi. And I appreciate all the drivers have been just wonderful and very responsible. But sometimes when you said that you can call within a 24 or 48 hours to get a ride, they tell you to call 7 to 10 days ahead in order to get a ride.
Mm.
And then you call and you say, what time is my ride? Because you have to call the day
Yes.
before.
Yep.
Because they used to have the phone thing and they said, don't listen to that. So I call the day before and then, like I said, it'll be sometimes 2 hours or hour and 40 minutes early there than he needs to be there. And like I said, then I have to pay that program because he's there.
Right.
And it's just a vicious circle for
Yes.
you, just as it is a vicious circle for us.
Believe me, if we could have a on-demand system where you only take one rider, it
Well,
would
I
be,
understand that
it's
that is an
challenging,
hour and
right,
whatever, but
right.
that's the situation we get into
Right.
with that and then being a raise in the price, it's just gonna be another circle for guys too. And that's my job, is to stand up for them. And I don't know what else to say, but I figured I needed to come to this meeting and express my opinion on standing up for people with disabilities.
Thank you. And that's why we, again, tried to limit the amount that of the fare increases on the
Mhm.
elderly and disabled because
But like I
we
said, what if you don't
understand.
get enough riders that they can't afford it, then that doesn't help your system either.
I think we definitely, I mean, we have lots of data and we'll continue to monitor that.
Yeah.
I don't think that, if we're turning down several rides a day right now and people have to wait and have to
Yeah.
call 7 days ahead of time, that if we do lose the percentage of riders,
Yeah.
that I think we'll have plenty to make up for it.
Well, and they say when you call, then they say, well, you're lucky you got a ride anyhow. I said, that's not very nice
No.
to say that on the phone.
Right,
We're calling because we need a ride.
right. Yep.
Thank you.
And just while you're working your way up there, I did look at, because we did talk about, you mentioned about socialization. So our trip purposes was in one of our committee packets. It didn't make the presentation, but about 56% of us, our rides are for employment, about another 21% for medical. And the next category below that is social recreation at 12%. Because you mentioned people use it for social purposes, and they certainly do. I just wanted to make sure that you were correct. But I'm just saying there's a lot of people that use it for other social aspects besides just being on the bus socially.
I'm in the situation almost opposite the gal in front of me. I take a disabled mom who requires the wheelchaired vehicles that you provide. She can't go alone. So I need to go with her as her support person, because even if it's door to door, they'd push her in the door and she'd have no idea what to do. She couldn't push the button to open the door. So when you increase that rate for folks, you're not just increasing it for that one person, but also in my case, for the support person that goes along with the individual who's disabled.
Right.
So we're kind of getting hit twice for each round trip.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And just for the people that are in the audience as well, that if you do have a care provider with you and you're disabled and the care provider is an adult, they actually do pay the same rate as the disabled or elderly person. So you shouldn't be charged as an adult. You should be getting the same rate. So I just to let you know that you're out there, so the people in the audience might know that when we do pay for the person taking the service plus their provider, they're paying the same rate, the lower rate in this instance for elderly disabled out there. So that is one way we try to help that situation. I know it's not perfect by increasing both of them, which is what you're saying, which I understand instead of 50 cents, it's $1 now for the two of you
Each way,
each way. Correct.
right?
Yes.
Which sounds like it's minimal, but it isn't when, you have a social security.
Right.
I also had a question of what the agency fare is. What does that mean? There's on the bottom of all of your fares, it says adult and it says agency fare. What is an agency fare?
So an agency fare is charged to, an agency fare is charged to a human service organization that purchases transport services on the behalf of their clients. So the agency contacts me with the ticket orders, and then ticket orders are sent out to the riders, to the clients.
But you say it's agency, it still comes, I know some are agency, but some come out of their own funds through the care and family care program. It still comes out of their own envelope that they get from the state. And I know some people get a transportation thing or something from the state, but I don't feel that if they're with a IRIS program or community care or whatever, I don't feel that they should have to pay that much more just because we send your money to you and you send or tell us to pick up our tickets. I don't feel that that's a fair deal to charge them $15 a ticket for 5 miles or 6 miles.
With agency fares, there's a lot more federal and state regulations that goes into it than just that. Whenever you take federal state money, it's never as easy as you want it to be or as you think it would be. So there are actually certain rates we do have to charge and do for agency fares and ways because
But
they're getting federal money or state money from other locations. So
But
it's
he's
a
not,
reality.
when he gets charged for his ticket, now they just started charging him an agency fee. The agency fee, it still comes out of his own funds. Nothing comes from the state. It comes out of his social security
We
or
can look-
his budget from the state that allows him to be,
We can look at that. That's not how we were told it was operating. So
okay.
maybe.
Because that's what I
maybe
got
glitch in the system.
charged for him this time. Before it didn't until this last check that I got. It was $560 for 4 tickets for him. I can make a car payment with that. I know, I know they have to get the money from them, but you get a money from everybody that rides the taxi.
If before you leave, you don't mind talking to Charlie and you guys can exchange phone numbers
Okay,
so that you can
okay.
talk this week on that.
Yeah,
I'd
I
appreciate
guess I
that.
did call them and I found out that for a while he couldn't ride because there was no contract with the IRIS program. And then they got their contract. And then that's when I found out that he's got to pay that much more. But like I said, it still comes out, he gets, say, $50,000 a year. But that's what he has to live on and do all his programs with. It's not like it's coming from the,
Right, yeah, and Charlie can talk to you about this offline,
Okay.
but he might be better off paying the disabled rate versus the
well,
agency fare.
exactly. That's what I thought would be the thing to do.
It could be.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing I want to bring to attention is you mentioned that you have 29 buses. Why aren't more of those being used? That there are drivers out there, but there are only 4 or 5 per shift. That is not enough for the people around there. If what you're trying to do, or what should be taken into account, is there are more people that need to ride it there. Why only limit it to 4 people? Why not bring more people on instead of limiting other people's capabilities?
Yeah, and that's a great point. One thing it comes down to being a shared ride taxi, you have to have the right person at the right time wanting a ride. So if you can imagine the area you're going from to you have to have another person that wants to go roughly from the same location to another roughly same location. And so that rider's driving around. Correct. And that's part of the math. It's very complicated with a shared ride taxi. Believe me, the math behind it and the computer behind it is incredibly challenging. But to get back to your point of why don't we have more of those buses on the road at any given time? Again, anywhere from 2 on late Sunday up to 18, sometimes 19 during the week during peak times, is that we have to pay for that driver and that person to be out there. And so our 58,000 hours, if we have more riders, more buses on the road at, let's just say at 7 to 10 a.m., that means some other time we have to have less buses on the road some other time. And believe me, we look at that and hopefully our provider is looking at those numbers going, okay, how do we move those buses around to make sure we're making the most of the clientele to get those rides taken care of? And so it's a bunch of math behind the scenes. And then they have to have drivers available at those times as well. And it might be challenging to say, hey, can you just drive for 3 hours this day and then go away for 3 hours and come back in the afternoon? It's just challenging, I'd imagine, to get bus drivers like that to do that. So there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I know we got a driver here that maybe can talk to you about the challenges that they have, either getting drivers or getting the peak ride times to be actually, filled up, as far as drivers are considered. So the problem is that we only have so much money to spend, and if we put more buses on the road during the day, then we can't service the hours at night or can't service the weekend. And that's certainly an option, something we'll probably be looking at in the future, is that, all right, when should we provide this service? Look at the other counties, they're only providing service basically during the week for 40 hours. We could do that and put a lot more buses on during the week, but then we might not have buses on Sunday when you need to get to work, or Saturday when you need to get to work. And that's part of the challenge. And we thought increasing the fares and not adjusting the service hours, and it's not great. Yes, we would all love to get the service hours up to 90,000 hours or 100,000 hours and get, we get over 30 buses on the road. We're in a different category for funding at the state level and a whole bunch of other regulations, but it'd be great. But unfortunately with tax money, you only have so much to spend and go so far. And we look at the cost of services for the highway, and you look at inflation going up for highway work and for even our facilities here that I'm in charge of, and the sheriff's deputies are on the road in their vehicles, and you just throw it all together in one mix and you do your best to prioritize. And I think they're doing a good job saying, we don't want to change the service as much as we can. And Public Works looking at, well, if we increase the fares, we don't have to impact the service that much. We know it's not perfect. We understand that. We wish it was, but we just don't have unlimited funds on this side of the table. To
Okay,
spend.
but what about those two buses that you said that you never got? Did you even consider going after them to try and get some of the money back if they're not gonna give you the two buses?
We're still waiting on them. We still want them because our older buses have several 100,000 miles on them. As soon as they're,
Okay,
Yeah,
but you have all these buses, but not the drivers to drive it. What I'm seeing is more of a wasteful spending more than proper spending.
yeah, and that, like I said before, the challenge we have is that, let's say we went from 27 buses down to 20, right? Now we got 19 buses on the road. If one has a crash, that's it. We don't have time to take any of those out of service for oil changes, tire rotations. And sometimes we've had several buses and vehicles down at one time, sometimes 3, 4. Sometimes they get totaled. Now we're waiting
Okay, but
another year.
there's a difference between what you're saying. That would be if there's 20 people. There's only like 4 or 5 people on the road at the time. There are plenty to spare.
I see the driver shaking his head. No, again, and if you look back at our committee minutes, and this didn't make the top 10 for the slides either. It actually has at our Public Works meeting on September 21st, and I can share this with you. And it is available on the county's website. It actually shows all the buses that they have. Again, it's not a perfect, right? Because every day there might be a driver calling sick or something like that. But generally speaking, how many buses or vehicles they have on the road at any given time. And we'd be happy to share that with you. Again, it's public information. We had it at our last meeting. We'd be happy to share that there are more than a handful of buses on a road at a given time. And I drive around the county. We're everywhere out there.
Okay, but this also brings up a good question. You said that there was a previous meeting. Why are none of these meetings being shown? I've checked online social medias for meetings like this. You didn't even announce this sort of meeting, which makes me wonder, why isn't the public not being told about
No,
any of this?
That's actually not the case. The last meetings that we've had on this for several months are actually all properly posted. They're all actually all on our YouTube channel. You can go back and rewatch any one of those that you'd like to go back and watch. And that's why we're actually having this public information meeting tonight, is to get that information out. This is not a requirement of us as far as our policy to change the fares. We could just have one public hearing and change it. We don't have to have any other meetings besides that. But the Public Works Committee and the chairman of that committee, I think, have done a really good job to look at this and not do a knee-jerk reaction. And over the last several months, gather up information, gather up more information, look at recommendations, have this public information meeting tonight. So other county board supervisors can look at this meeting and the other ones that are on the Public Works and watch that, and the general public to know, why is this happening? It's not just a one-page flyer of we're going to increase the fares, here it is, and we're moving on. That's why we're having these meetings tonight and having the public hearing. And again, most likely not voting that night, but waiting another month to think it over and to consider the ramifications of this. Is not an easy decision for them. It really isn't. Getting rid of the Commuter Express was not an easy decision for them. And they don't take this lightly. They take it very seriously, and they're looking at options, and hopefully they look at this as one of the options. If there's something else that comes out of this meeting tonight, or if we get other correspondence or at the public hearing, it certainly could have changes and, ramifications of what they look at.
Okay, but why raise it so high for the adults compared to other people? Because very few of the adult, jobs these days are, of minimum wage, but at the same time, they're not like $15 an hour. Right, that's, really narrowing down people's budgets. If you're taxing that high, it would make it near impossible for some people maybe to get food or even keep their houses or apartments.
We had to draw the line somewhere, and that's where we looked at it going, well, how much do we impact the elderly, disabled, the students versus how much do we impact the adults? And again, we compare that to Uber fares and go, great, this is where we think it is. And if the Public Works Committee doesn't agree with us, they certainly have in their purview to make changes to our recommendations.
Is your goal to have more and more riders? Is that going to help our budget to have more riders to ride the taxi?
Yeah, I would love that the math behind the scenes in our computer programs work great. And everybody from one location wants to go to another location at roughly the same time. Yeah, we'd love to have that ridership back up to 90,000. Absolutely.
Well, then I suggest not to tell the people on the phone to tell you you're lucky you're getting a ride when I call 10 days.
Sure.
Well, say maybe call next week. It would make you feel much better than to say, you think you're never going to get a ride then.
Sure. We can talk to them about customer
Yeah.
service. I know they address that, and
Yeah.
it's,
I did call
a
in
challenge.
and say something to the one lady in charge but like I said, I would like to be encouraged to call and
Sure,
say, can I
absolutely.
come tomorrow? Call
That's
us
a
back tomorrow. you know?
fantastic point. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we are a public service after all.
You projected a 25% decrease in ridership.
Yep.
Because of that rate increase, what if you reduced the increase in rate? I mean, have you done those projections? If we didn't increase the $7 fare up to 15, what if we only increased it to 10 this year and then maybe 11 or 12 next year? Did you run those projections?
Well, right now, it's just the projection is our guess. Our guess is as good as yours to say, what is the adults, how many adults are going to leave because of the fare increase? Whether it's $6, $7, $8, there's no mathematical formula that says if you raise the fares by $6, you're going to lose 12%. If you raise it by $8, you're going to lose 15%. So right now, the 25% that you see on there is truly a dart at the board going,
let-
we think we're going to lose some. To we could also say the other way going, hey, it's going to be great in roses and we're not going to lose any, I think would be a disservice.
So
so-
is there a possible number that if it was a reduction of 50%, would you consider reducing the fare increase? Or is it set in stone once it's decided on?
Well, once they decided here, that's going to go into effect January 1 of 2024. The one thing we look at is we look at our budget numbers and everything else every 2 years, that when we look at our ridership going forward and we get our ridership numbers by the month, we'll know exactly what we're looking at here a year in and to say, okay, look at this, this didn't impact this, or this did impact this.
Right.
What changes can we make? So just as easy as the fares go down, they could go, up, they could go down. I don't anticipate that, to be honest, out front with you. But we just don't know how that's going to impact that. But we knew if we said 100% of the riders are going to stay and skew the numbers that way, that might not be the best thing. So we just picked a number out of and said, "Yeah, we think about 25%, about a quarter of those." Again, because you look at how many are going to be deeply impacted, is about 85 of those people, right, that take it on a near daily basis. And so look at that going, all right, if you got 85 of them, you take away 25% of those. All right, you lose about 20 of those people. So that's what we looked at going. So it wasn't a whole lot of math behind the scenes. It was just kind of saying, yep, of the 80,
It's 85 times 2 if they take the round trip ride.
no, the 85 people. So
Times 2, because they take a round trip ride. You know, what I'm saying is 85 people pay 2 fares.
fares, correct, 100%. Yes, you are 100% correct. Yep. I hopefully made that clear that there's rides is on all the data that you see there, ride is a one-way ride.
Correct.
That's all it is. Correct.
Mhm.
Yes.
It's gonna be to the point that a person has to get to work. like he's saying, how many people are you gonna lose?
Yep.
Regardless, they have to get to work because they have to get there and that's their only transportation.
Correct. Yep. And that's
It's
what we're.
gonna be a burden, like she said, on
Yeah.
families,
Mhm.
their food budget, their electric budget, something's gotta give so that they can get to work.
Right, and that's why we're looking at, maybe there's some other options, getting some private
Mhm.
sector people in there to help fill that gap a little bit. It may be an answer to looking at your coworkers and setting up your schedule, so maybe somebody can pick you up 1 or 2 days a week. It's not perfect. I'm honest with that, but you're gonna have to start looking at other options that may or may not be out there. If you'd like to sit in one of the chairs, we can do that too for you.
No,
and-
that's fine.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm happy and I'm pleased we have this service in the county. Like I said, I've been in and out of surgeries for the last 3 or 4 years, so it's been a necessity for me because I can't drive. So I spend sometimes $80 to $100 a month in tickets just to get there. Now, a lot of this I understand has to do with logistics, okay? We came to a situation in this program where somebody said, oh, we got a new boss, and they cut the budget. And all of a sudden, we were told that we had to start scheduling our trips 4 to 7 days out. Well, now it's 7 to 10. Okay, so a lot of this is logistics, and I understand as we go down the road that the time that we need to schedule our rides is going to get shorter. Okay. As the efficiency of this department gets better, which I hope. Now, my question is to the other side, you had mentioned that if you go just to disabled and elderly riding, your funding changes. How much does that change? Or what is the percentage? Do you get more from the county? Do you get more from the state?
It'd be more on the county. So instead of this, basically it's 58, 42, 58% being state and federal and 42% being local. The percent is higher. I don't know what the percent is off the top of my head because we really didn't think that was a good option out there. And so we didn't do a whole lot of research on it to say, okay, what's better off? And that's why you look at these other counties, why they only have a couple vehicles and they only have a service for a couple hours because they're fronting a lot more of those costs with their county local dollars. And so we didn't look at that as an option going, all right, we think there are adults out there that need the service. We know there are adults out there that need the service. We don't want to eliminate them from the service because I think you see a lot more people out in the audience here tonight. If we said, yep, we're done with the adults, we're going to eliminate them. And so we want to make sure we recognize that they're out there and they need this service. And so we're looking at that and saying, all right, let's not change our funding source and go to just more local funding. And if we did that, we would definitely be reducing the number of buses and vehicles that we have on the roadway. And we'd be right down to what like Dodge County does or Sheboygan County does and saying, yeah, we're going to have 5 on the road versus 19. I mean, it might be reality someday with the service costs going up. So it might be a reduction coming, as I've been mentioned earlier, but for right now, we're trying to avoid that and see if this works out for the next 2 years. And we'll look at those numbers and maybe the next 2 years, it won't be that bad. Maybe they'll stay and help pump up the cost a little bit.
Thank you.
So we don't want to shorten anybody up. If anybody else has any, we will still be here after. There are obviously people at home, but I don't want to keep this on if there are no more general questions. We'd be certainly happy to answer those. If you have a specific question, Charlie and I will be here, after the meeting as well. I do want to again plug the public hearing that's on October 19th, right here at 6 p.m. Same locations, same podium. Again, if you can't make it, we understand that. Please email or mail in your comments. We'd be happy to share those with the Public Works Committee members. Anything else to share before we close the meeting up publicly? John.
Of that meeting next week, I would love to hear from them and have them here and comment. I appreciate it. I have one more. Oh, you okay? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we didn't close.
That's all right. I remember seeing a slide that talked about a 35% cost increase from 2012 to 2024.
I think that was the
Expenses.
CPI. Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
CPI? Or
Consumer
was it
Price
actual
Index.
Numbers.
that's Consumer Price Index.
Was that actual numbers from the county?
No, that's federal government does this Consumer Price Index.
Well, no, I understand that. It's just that the 35% increase, you showed 2012 numbers and 2024 projected numbers.
So 24, 23.
Remember that slide where it showed 35% increase over that time span of 2012 to 2024? Was that the CPI that increased 35%? I thought
Believe so.
inflation was very, very low according to our experts in the federal government who keep changing the,
I won't comment on what changed in 2020. That caused the inflation rate to skyrocket
Yeah.
versus before was only, again, at 2 to 3% typically for most of the years. So, but you gotta remember inflation, besides what people don't want to tell you, is it compounds. 2% one year and 2% the next year is not 4%. It's higher than that, right? It compounds. That's the one right there. 2023, June 2023.
oh, it was a different slide.
Oh,
I saw, okay, total. In the 2012 where it says total. 2490 for 2,494,000 in 2012 over to 3376 in
Yep,
2024. That's a 35%
5%
increase
in costs. Yes,
in cost.
yes.
For the transportation service, for the bus service.
Road ride taxi
shared
service
ride
only.
taxi
Yep,
service.
yep.
So if you had that kind of an increase in that time frame, why not just increase those prices for adults by 35 or even 50%?
Because that's not the reality, because this is just the costs, not taking into account the loss of revenue on the other side, on the fare side as well. Right, so you got both things, maybe 20,000 less rides, so that's less fares on the other side as well. So you got both sides working in in basically the same direction, going, that gap, instead of narrowing, the gap is widening. So this is just costs. Now the revenue side is going down, costs are going up. So you're going in opposite directions on that.
Revenue
So-
side is going down. I thought we
Right.
had an increase in ridership.
No, we just said that in 2023, we're anticipating 76,000 rides. Pre-pandemic,
Okay.
we're at 93,000 rides. So
Okay,
we're
yeah,
down quite a few rides
I see that.
because of
now.
that. Yeah.
Yes, okay,
So that's the challenge you have, right? Is that ridership dropped and expenses went up. And so the cost per ride is, back in 2012, the cost to do a ride was $26. Now it's $44. So I mean, it's a pretty good deal out there yet, even for the adults. I know they're not going to agree to it because it was such a drastic jump in 1 year. But it's still, when you look at it going, can I get 20 miles with my vehicle there back and have wear and tear on the vehicle, the insurance, pay somebody else to drive me there and back, and the gas?
do you know why the ridership decreased that much in that time span?
COVID was number one.
Well,
That in 2020, and you go back to the ridership slide, please. So COVID obviously just put it in a tank for us in 2020, and it just climbed back up. It's very similar to our commuter express, that our ridership went down over there. They never rebounded though.
a lot of
But-
people are still
but-
working from home.
It could be. I don't know what, maybe there's other people are taking more medical rides, maybe because they can't get a ride because they're 7 days out, and it just, I couldn't begin to tell you. You'd have to talk to riders that are no longer taking the service and why they didn't come back.
I do have one more question. When you did all the statistics on all the different counties, was any of the populations in each county, was the amount of people living in each county taken for granted, how many people live in each county?
We did not look at that specifically. We could, but I'd imagine that Waukesha has more than we have. Fond du Lac has the city of Fond du Lac, and pretty similar in size. Same with Sheboygan. I think they're all not too terribly far off of what we do. Ozaukee County is much smaller, but their population is, pretty dense over there. So I don't think there's a great difference in population between those. Racine County is definitely different because half of their county is urban and the other half is rural. So that's definitely one that's definitely an outlier of those counties. Calumet, I believe, is much smaller size wise than us. Jefferson probably similar, larger in area, probably similar in population, I would guess. But no, we did not look specifically to see our population versus theirs. Again, it's challenging because we don't do a lot of city to city rides, because when we go city to city, we do actually do our door to door for the people in the city, and the city of West Bend handles the curb to curb service in the city. Same thing with City of Hartford, has a few taxis. So it's kind of hard to say, do you count the people in the city of West Bend and Hartford as they're definitely county residents, but how do you do the math for this whole area here with Sheboygan having some buses in the city of Sheboygan? But so that's where we're kind of looking at our rural population is, generally speaking, more of our clientele. Not 100% of it, because we do door-to-door service in the cities of Hartford and West Bend as well. But so it's challenging to say, well, very challenging for me to go to those other counties going, how many of those people in Fond du Lac and rural Fond du Lac or rural Sheboygan County versus ours, but we still can go into the city on occasion.
Okay.
I just hate to see ridership go down because of the price,
Right.
because we need the service.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you all very much. And thank you for those watching at home. This will be recorded, so you can feel free to watch back or play back. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.